We've added our very first enemy into the game. It's time to add in our hurt box and hitbox system so that we can attack these enemies. We're going to be using a component-based system, and actually Godot's kind of the way that your workflow in Godot is generally component-based. You add different components to a base, which we just call nodes, but they're all kind of components to a node when we need some sort of behavior. And so we're going to make our own components like that. And I recommend generally using components over inheritance if you possibly can. And the reason is because then you can choose whether or not you want something to have that component. It's very easy to just say, oh, this enemy needs this component, but this enemy doesn't. And so that's generally, it's an easier approach to deal with. So we'll start by making a new custom, we'll make a new scene, new custom node, and do area 2D. Now this area 2D, we'll call this hurt box. So we'll start with the hurt box, and we'll give it a collision shape. I'll just rename that collider. And we're going to save this scene. And we need to make a new folder here. So I'm just going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it collision boxes. I don't know, it's kind of a weird name, but we'll go with it. Save this as inside of that folder. And then we can attach a script. We're going to need a script for this. And it should save it in the right folder. I'm going to open it up here in my reference project. All this script is going to do, our hurt box, it just needs to have a signal that it emits whenever it takes damage. And we're going to emit the amount of damage that we took. So signal, we'll call it hit. And we'll pass the damage that we take. And that's it. Nothing too fancy there. We're going to create another scene, custom node. We'll do an area 2D again. Call it hitbox. We'll attach a collision shape to it, and we'll call this collider. And so we'll save this inside of collision box as well. I don't remember if this does need a script as well. So attach a script to it. And inside of here, we're going to have an export, which will be an int var damage, set equal to 1. So this is how much damage this hitbox will deal. So the hurt box is what's going to receive damage, and the hitbox is going to be what will deal the damage. And in order to detect a collision, we'll click on our area 2D here. We'll come over to our signals, and we want area entered. And hitbox right here, make a function, connect. And we're going to rename this, instead of being area, we'll rename this hurt box. Because our hitbox should only ever collide with hurt boxes. Hurtbox dot emit signal hit damage. So we're just forcing the hurt box to emit its hit signal and passing the damage. So pretty easy, right? We've got the signal here that takes damage, and we're just emitting that signal and passing our damage amount for how much damage we should be dealing. Now we want to come into our collisions and turn off both the layer and the mask for both of these, so that we don't have any set on either one. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to be setting those manually depending on who we're attaching them to. So if we're attaching a hurt box to a player, we'll want it to be on the player hurt box layer. If we're attaching it to an enemy, we'll want it to be on the enemy hurt box layer. And we'll start by attaching it to our projectile, the player's projectile. So open up the projectile parent. We'll add a new, we'll instance a new hitbox. Remember, the hitbox deals the damage. So we'll instance a hitbox. We'll just have it deal 1 damage. And then we need to right click and do editable children so we can set our collider. Well, actually, we don't need to do that here. Okay. All we need to do is say, okay, who are we going to collide with? And we'll use the mask to see who we're going to target. But let's go into project settings and go into our 2D physics. Inside of here, we're going to be setting up two more layers, named layers. We'll have a player hurt box and an enemy hurt box, like this. And we'll do close. We want the hitbox on our projectile. Well, this projectile, we don't want to give it one because we want it to have the hitbox, but we don't want to tell it what layer. And that's because even enemy projectiles will inherit from this projectile. So what we want to do is come into our player bullet now. And inside of our player bullet, we should see our hitbox. And there it is. So we're going to come into the collision here. And what do we want this one to target? So remember, the mask is the thing that you're targeting, and the layer is the thing that you're on. We don't need to be on any layer. We just need to target a layer. So let's target the enemy hurt box layer. There we go. Then we'll do editable children here and set up our collision shape. Now, what I've found, hold control so you can get pixel snap on. What I've found is that it's better to do a slightly smaller shape for the bullet so that it's easier to avoid hitting the walls, and then a slightly larger shape for the enemy so that it's still easy to hit the enemies. You don't want the enemies to feel like they're really hard to hit, so I make the bullets smaller so they tend to not hit the walls, like corners of walls and stuff, as easily, and then the enemies bigger. So we'll save that, go into enemy, and we'll add a hurt box to our enemy. This is the parent, remember. And our enemy hurt box should be on, so come to the layer. This is the layer that it's on, should be on enemy hurt box. And we need to obviously set up some signals here. So first we'll click on our hurt box. We'll come over here. Remember, we added a hit signal. So now our hurt box can signal to the enemy when it's been hit. So we'll double click on that. We'll choose the enemy. And inside of here, we'll just call Q free. Like that. Okay. So once again, our player bullet, the hitbox is on or is targeting the enemy hurt box layer. And then our enemy, this is the parent, the hurt box is on the enemy hurt box layer, and it signals to the enemy when it takes damage. So we can run the game, and oh, we forgot to give it a collision shape, right? So what we'll need to do, this will be different for each enemy. So let's open up the walking enemy. And inside of here, we can do editable children. Oh, another thing is check to make sure that the collision updated here. And it does seem like it did. So we'll right click, editable children. We'll set up a collision shape, new rectangle. oops, click, then hold control. Once again, I think going a little bit bigger, you can choose the size and stuff, but I've found that going a little bit bigger, you know, make it lenient. Make it so that it makes the player feel like they're a good shot. It's already hard enough to aim. So we'll make that slightly larger. Then we should see this working now. And there we go. The bullet doesn't get destroyed and we can still shoot through walls, so we need to fix that. So come back into our projectile. And inside of here, we can actually we can make our hitbox target the world. So all projectiles should target the world, I think. Maybe you want to make a projectile that doesn't. And if that's the case, leave this blank and then you would have to go through in every projectile and make it target the world. But I'm just going to have this one target the world. Then we'll go to its signals and we'll connect. The world is made up of bodies, physics bodies. So we'll take our body entered signal and connect that, create a function for it. And we'll also call QFree here. This will cause our projectile to be destroyed when it hits a wall. And then if we come into the player, let's see. Our projectile. Let's test this. Let's see if this works. Okay, it's not working, so let's double check our player bullet. Click on the hitbox. Collision. Okay, it didn't update. Even though I did it in the parent, it didn't update. So let's just not do it in projectile. We'll just uncheck it there. And we'll just do it inside of the player bullet. We'll just say, yeah, this collides with the world as well. This targets the world. And that's the same problem that I had. That's the same problem that I had with the last lecture. So that's an interesting thing. I don't know if that's a glitch or something. But now it gets destroyed when it hits world elements. But we can still shoot the enemies. But they go through the enemies. We'd like them to not go through the enemies, right? So this is a cool thing you can do. You can set up to where the hitbox right here, it already has a function for on area entered, right? We can do this again. We can call another one of these. Let me make sure that I'm setting this up in the correct spot. It looks like I set it up on projectile. Yeah. So in projectile, when we collide, yeah, we can set up another one inside of projectile. So inside of projectile, we can do, we can click on our hitbox. And even though this area entered is already connected inside of its own scene, we can also connect it. So we can connect to the projectile. So we've got two signals connected there, right? One that connects to itself right here. You can see the dot there. And then one that connects to the projectile. You can see the two dots there, which means it comes back to the parent. And well, it's not technically connecting to itself. Well, yeah, it is. It connects to itself. So in the projectile parent, it creates this function just like this, just like our body. And we can just call QFree. So when a projectile hits a hurt box, it will destroy itself. And we do want that across the board with all projectiles when they hit a hurt box. And there you go. So once again, we just got our hurt box that was on the projectile, and we connected the area entered signal to the projectile, and then had it call Q free. So the projectile destroys itself whenever the hitbox collides with an area, which will only ever be a hurt box in this case, because of the way we're setting up our layers, our collision layers and masks. Perfect. So now you can run around and shoot the enemies. We don't have our own hurt box yet, but we'll be setting that up. First, we'll be setting up some... We've still got bouncing here. I don't know why this bounces. I thought we fixed that. Does this one bounce? Nope, that one doesn't bounce. I don't know why this one's bouncing. We'll have to figure that out later. But we'll eventually be able to set up a hurt box and hitbox for our player as well. Or a hurt box for our player and hitboxes for the enemies using this same system. So now that we've implemented it, we can use it in multiple other places. And I think it's a really powerful system to set them up like this. And it should be applicable in multiple different kinds of games, not just this game. You could use it in any game that you're making. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I will see you all in the next one.